My name is Dina Vineski. I'm here with Sara Ross, who's a vitality advocate. Sara, can you give us some examples of how we might be able to buffer stress in our daily lives?
Some of the best ways to buffer our stress are not just relaxing. And that's where we tend to default. We got to go and put our feet up. But in fact, when we are buffering stress, we really need to think about how do we manage our brain capacity. And so there's an acronym that we can use to help us recognize what are the things our brain needs to buffer stress. And it's brain care. And care stands for C, connection, A, activation, R, restoration, and E, exploration. And what's really interesting is we don't need to do all of these all the time, but if we can start to get little bits into our day, stand up and move around a little bit, go to the museum and walk through to learn something new that day. If we can build in little pieces, it immediately starts buffering our brain. And if we can start to compound those things, go to the museum with somebody that you enjoy and who makes you laugh and walk there instead of driving there, even more effective.
Sara, can you tell us a little bit about how we can recognize burnout signs and things that we can do about it?
Some of the ways that you can recognize when you are defaulting into burnout, those key symptoms include when we feel cynical, when we are feeling unproductive, and when we feel exhausted. Now, it's one thing to feel that at the end of a day or a really intense week, but when that starts to become a habit, especially if you are hearing feedback from other people that are saying that you seem different than you usually do, those are red flags. And those are the times that we need to pay attention, because the opposite end of those is when we're feeling open, when we're feeling focused, and when we're feeling energized. So a great way is to just monitor yourself, especially when you're working on really intense projects, to make sure that those ratings stay closer to the open, focused, and energized, and pay attention when they start to slide into feeling cynical, negative, overwhelmed, and exhausted.
Sara, we hear from a lot of people that it's sometimes hard to wind down at the end of a really long workday. Could you give us some tips on how in the on-demand world with our phone by our bedside, we might be able to wind down?
Yeah, so winding down at the end of the evening is sometimes the part that people find most challenging when it actually comes to sleep. So we can think about it in hours before we actually attempt to fall asleep. 3 hours, 2 hours, and 1 hour. There are some really key things we can do. So 3 hours before bed, try to cut down anything that falls into the category as a stimulant. So that would include alcohol, that would include exercise. And for the coffee lovers out there, decrease and stop your caffeine 3 hours before bed. 2 hours before bed, this is a great time to stop the intake of fluids and food. We want to give our body an opportunity to digest, and it also means we may not be waking up in the middle of the evening to do some natural biobalancing. And probably most important is the hour before bed. Where possible, decrease distractions, especially from your digital devices. So put these off to the side, read a book, dim the lights, and if there is one thing you don't do, don't check your email an hour before you go to bed. Give your brain an opportunity to slow down and get ready to sleep.
Sara, thank you so much for joining us today and for all of your advice. I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, you too.